Hey everyone, welcome to Upside Down Data, your source for regular updates on where the data say the crypto markets are heading. This is an update video on Ethereum. I'm going to be telling you about what the upside downside potential indicator, or the UDPI, says about Ethereum right now. The UDPI is a new risk reward metric that we developed, and we started this channel to share our analyses with you based on the UDPI and other data science approaches to the market. So let's talk about Ethereum. What you see here is the Ethereum price history coded based on the UDPI. On the right-hand side, you see the UDPI scoring metric. Score of 5 indicates that there's a lot of downside potential for Ethereum at that time. Score of -5 in the green indicates that there's a lot of upside potential. So those both indicate asymmetric trades. Score of 5 indicates that there's a lot more downside than upside potential. A score of -5 indicates that there's a lot more upside than downside potential, and would mean that that would be a good time to accumulate. So looking at the price history here, we can see that we've got some spikes when the price gets a bit overheated. The UDPI accelerates up toward that 4+ or 5 region, indicating a lot of downside potential. If we look over at the right side of the graph, in more recent times, we can see this spike that we had in the first quarter of 2021, where the Ethereum valuation against the US dollar got pretty overheated. The downside potential was pretty substantial, and no surprise that we got some downside. What about now? Well, if you look at the furthest to the right, we see that we're around the midpoint, that orange territory. When we're hovering around 0, we'll look at that value in a moment. And so that's where we are right now. But another thing that I want to draw to your attention is this green dip there over on the right, between that first pump up in the first quarter of 2021 and where we are now. We had a retracement. We had quite low levels on the UDPI, indicating that there was a lot of upside potential during that May through July pullback that we had in the market. Now, that's really important to emphasize, actually, because if you were around during that time and trying to make sense of what was happening, trying to make your decisions about what to do, you will have probably encountered some people calling for Bitcoin to drop to 20K, even 10K. If Bitcoin was going to drop to 20K, then Ethereum was going to pull back quite substantially too, maybe to its prior all-time high from the previous cycle of 1400. Those were scary times if you weren't sure what was going on. And the power of the UDPI and a data science approach to crypto more generally is that based on this metric at that time in May and June and July, when things were a little bit scary, you could have tuned out people calling for a drop all the way down to 20 or 10K. It didn't seem particularly realistic. The potential for that kind of downside was just not there. So this is what the UDPI is helping us to accomplish here. So let's look at this a little bit of a different way now. Here we have the UDPI coded on its own across the price history of Ethereum. We see these fluctuations. We've got this 0 midpoint right running horizontally right through the middle of this graph, and when the price, when the UDPI jumps up and starts to get red, we've got more downside potential coming, and we can see that those corrections then did indeed come. But where we are right now is we are pulling back on the UDPI after a bit of an extension to the upside over the last couple of months, and now the UDPI is sitting below 1, indicating that maybe it's not a perfectly symmetric trade, but not extremely overextended, not a major worry. And if you are someone who thinks that we're in a broader bull market right now, then certainly there's nothing on this chart that gives major reason for concern. Another thing you can look at here is how this maps on to previous price peaks. So if we go back all the way to June of 2017, we see that the UDPI called the top almost perfectly there. We have the January 2018 top, same thing. We have the February 2021 top, and then the May 2021 top. And in each of these 4 cases, the UDPI mapped right on to those tops. The value was very high, indicating a lot of downside potential. and we got that reversal right there. So this would have been a very useful thing to be incorporating into your toolbox during these heated times in the market. So to sum it up, this is where the UDPI is now for Ethereum against the US dollar. There's a UDPI gauge. You'll get used to seeing these on the channel. And we're sitting at 0.9. Like I said, just below 1, above the midpoint, indicating that it's not as asymmetric a trade in terms of an attractive risk to reward ratio as it would be if we were in the negative values, but still not extremely overheated. Nothing really alarming there by any stretch of the imagination. That's against the dollar. Of course, if you're thinking about Ethereum, you're probably also thinking about Bitcoin. And a key question now, especially if you think that we're in a broader bull market, is this an Ethereum time? Is this a time to be thinking about moving Bitcoin into Ethereum, prioritizing Ethereum over Bitcoin? Key question to consider. So we're going to, again, take a UDPI approach to try to answer that question. So here we have the entire price history of Ethereum against Bitcoin coded by upside downside potential. The thing that probably jumps out to you most when you look at this chart is that there's a sea of green. And we've got spikes up into orange and red relatively infrequently. And so the broad takeaway from this chart is that historically, buying Ethereum has been a good thing for stacking sats. Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin since its inception. No surprise there, right? But the chart captures that. And within that context, we can see the times when there have been exceptions to that. One of those times was earlier this year in 2021 when Ethereum went on a pretty substantial run in the first quarter of the year. It outpaced Bitcoin pretty substantially, and we see that the UDPI reflected that. We got this big spike up, indicating a lot of downside potential, and that downside came. And then the price consolidated a bit. The UDPI turned green for a bit, indicating a very high upside potential trade. Now what we're doing is we're pulling back into relatively neutral territory as well. We can also look at this in terms of this oscillating UDPI on its own, and we can see more clearly that where we are right now is we've actually entered the green. So the UDPI is sitting at about minus 1.5, which indicates that there's more upside potential against Bitcoin than downside potential. So not a crazy idea to be thinking about Ethereum in the context of this market. Now, there are reasons to suspect that Bitcoin might continue to outpace Ethereum for the near future. One important thing to consider is that historically, during the latter part of the calendar year, during the fourth quarter, Bitcoin tends to outperform Ethereum, so the Ethereum valuation against Bitcoin tends to pull back. And then in the first quarter of the year, that tends to reverse. No guarantees, but that's what tends to happen. And so we might continue to see the UDPI pull back on the Ethereum to Bitcoin ratio, in which case that would continue to become a more and more attractive trade for the long term. So this is something to keep an eye on in the coming months. We're going to see where Ethereum goes, where it goes against Bitcoin. We're going to see what the UDPI has to say about that. And in future videos, we'll be talking a little bit more about how to identify reversals using a UDPI chart. So that's something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on. So I'll wrap up for now. That's where Ethereum is at in terms of the UDPI. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you continue to get these regular updates about what the data science is telling us about how to navigate the market. Remember, with UDPI, we are going to make it. Thanks for watching.